before you go anywhere tonight, before the cold plains, and the painted tombs, and the little pieces of bone turned loose in tired hands. Notice, just for a moment, how extravagantly fortunate you are. You are not lying on ground packed flat by 100 years of feet. You are not wrapped in a hide that still faintly remembers the animal. You are not listening to the weather because the weather has legal rights over your entire evening. You are instead tucked into the mild conspiracy of duvet and mattress and walls, all of them quietly agreeing to keep the dark politely outside. Quite civilized of them, really. And yet, for all that comfort, your mind, maddeningly, still wants one more story before it will agree to let you go. So let us give it a very old one, the oldest perhaps of all our small entertainments. Let us follow the sound of little objects falling, not in a casino, not in a palace, but beside a fire on the far side of the last ice age. You needn't do anything now. You needn't remember any of this in the morning. Let your shoulders come down from wherever the day has parked them. Let your jaw unclench. Let the hand that has been holding the day all day simply open. There, that sound, that tiny, hopeful sound. People have been making it for 12,000 years. You open your eyes in the late Pleistocene, somewhere along the western plains of North America, in a camp real enough, in the archaeological record, to have left hearths, work areas, tools, paint, bone needles, and the patient traces of people who came back to a favored place again and again, at a site such as Lindenmeyer, in what is now Colorado. Archaeologists have read more than 50,000 artifacts out of the ground cooking areas, places where hides were scraped and stitched into clothing and shelter, the leavings of a community that knew this valley well enough to return to it. It is, in other words, a home, not a tidy one, but a home. The night is broad and cold enough to make a modern person instantly, helplessly devotional about duvets. The wind moves over the prairie in long, patient strokes. It smells of dry grass and distant animal warmth and old earth and smoke. Smoke that has worked itself into everything you own, because no one here enjoys the luxury of one fragrance for daily labor and another, nicer one, for the evening. There is only the one smell. It is wood smoke, and it is you now. The shelter beside you is practical, rather than decorative, which is a gentle way of saying that interior design has not yet had its golden age. Hides have been stretched over a frame, scraped thin, stitched with sinew. You can hear the work in the very walls when the wind leans on them, that low, leathery creak, like the building itself is breathing. Run your hand over the nearest skin. It is coarse, faintly greasy, warm where it has been near the fire and shockingly cold an inch away. Everything here is like that comfort and misery living side by side, separated by the width of a flame. Somewhere beyond the firelight there are bones from past meals, tools laid down for the night, the dark shoulder of the valley that has drawn people back year upon year. Bone needles, beads, paint, ground and waiting. This is not a cartoon of primitive existence. It is organized life, skilled life, tiring life. A life in which people hunted and repaired and scraped and stitched and cooked and waited. And if a recent reading of the evidence is correct, also played. Perhaps your hands are sore tonight. Perhaps the skin across your knuckles is split by cold and by work. Perhaps someone close to you is still drawing sinew through a hole in a hide, mending something by firelight. Because if it is not mended now, then tomorrow becomes personally offensive. And yet, the work has eased, just a little. And into that small, warm pocket of human time comes the thing this whole story turns upon. Not rest, exactly. Something better than rest. Play. In your palm are two small pieces, perhaps more, the size of objects made to be held together and cast. A study published in 2026 argues that the earliest known indigenous North American dice may belong to exactly this deep horizon proposed from late Pleistocene Folsom deposits in Wyoming, Colorado, and New Mexico. They were typically two-sided, often of wood or bone, with one face marked or shaped or stained so that it could be told from the other, so that each throw gave a clean binary answer. Marked or unmarked. You turn one piece over with your thumb. One face catches the firelight differently. You feel more than see, a small worn place where many thumbs have done exactly this. Marked, unmarked, yes, no, fortune, not tonight. There is something rather moving about how modest the machinery of chance once was. No glittering tables, no chandeliers, no cheerful website explaining in soothing colors the principles of fair play. Just a few shaped things in a tired hand, and the unmistakable ancient human urge to ask the dark a question and wait to see what it says. We do not know the exact rules at this fire. We do not know the stakes. Perhaps the game settles a small quarrel no one wishes to have allowed. Perhaps it shares out some modest prize. Perhaps it simply fills the long hour between labor and sleep. Or perhaps, as that same research suggests for later contexts, such games helped half-strangers sit together, loosely connected people, drawn to the same good campsite, learning to trade and bargain and endure one another's company, without it all immediately becoming difficult, which, when you think about it, remains one of humanity's more ambitious hobbies. We have not entirely mastered it yet. Someone casts. The pieces strike the smoothed ground near the fire. A few faces turn to look. Not because the result will alter the fate of any empire, there are no empires yet. The idea has not been invented, but because, for one held breath, chance itself has stepped into the circle, and people have always made room for that particular guest. The fire smells stronger now. Grease and smoke and singed fiber and warm hide and the faint mineral breath of worked stone cooling after a day in busy hands. If you lean back, the cold finds you at once nosing round the edges of the shelter, creeping through everything the flame has not directly claimed. Your bed here, if we are generous enough to call it that, will be a good deal less persuasive than the one waiting for the listener in the present. Here, the body sleeps because exhaustion wins the argument. Not because the arrangement is comfortable. The stars, it must be said, are magnificent. The fleas, one imagines, are equally committed to the experience. The good news is that your view of the heavens is utterly without rival. The bad news is that underfloor heating has so far failed to appear. And still, in spite of the cold and the sore hands and the complete and total absence of memory foam, something tender keeps happening at this fire. A game begins again. Eyes narrow. A hand hovers. Someone laughs quietly through the nose. The working camp becomes, for a few minutes, a small theater of uncertainty, a place where a handful of marked objects turn raw randomness into ritual. This is the real enchantment of the whole subject. Not that ancient people played, of course they played. It is that they played while living lives our soft modern bodies would find punishing inside of an hour. And the pastime is still, completely, recognizable. The throw, the pause, the glance across at another player, the faintly absurd hope that luck, for no very good reason at all, might might choose you next. If you look at the people around you not too directly, just enough, you can begin to see the whole future hidden in outline. A hand that tosses marked bone tonight may, in some far century, push carved pieces across a board in Egypt. A watcher leaning in from the dark may one day become a queen, painted forever in the act of moving through little squares. A murmur over this fire may, in time, become a murmur in a tavern, then the scrape of a stylus on wet clay, then a single love-struck line scratched on a wall in a doomed Italian town. Because once human beings discover that chance can be given a shape, they never really let the idea go. So stay here a little longer. Feel the warmth on your face, the cold at your back, the rough hide under your hand. That small, quiet pulse of anticipation as another throw is gathered up. You do not yet know the words probability, or odds, or social technology. Those belong to much later people, sitting in much better chairs. But you know the sensation itself, the oldest part of it, the tiny suspension of the heart in the half-second before the objects land. And because you know it, you belong here for a moment. In a while, when the fire burns lower, we will let the marked bone become polished ivory, and the open plain give way to carved boxes and painted walls, and the cold give way, at last, to the warm hush of Egypt. But not yet. You open your eyes, and the cold has gone. You are sitting on a low stool in a room of pale stone, somewhere along the river, more than 3,000 years ago. The air is warm and still and smells of nothing dangerous, of linen and lamp oil and dust that has been baking gently in the sun all day. After the Ice Age, this feels almost obscene in its comfort. You have a floor. You have a roof that is not also a former animal. You have, faintly, the river. Quite the promotion. In front of you, on a slim wooden box, lies a board. It is a beautiful thing. 30 small squares, in 3 neat rows of 10, inlaid into the lid. Some are blank. A few are marked with little signs. The Met holds a game box like this one dated to somewhere around the 15th century before the Common Era. Clever and double-sided, carrying a board for the game of Senet on one face, and a board of 20 squares on the other. 2 games, 1 box. Even the furniture, you see, has learned to do more than one thing. Run your fingertip along the surface. After hide and bone and packed earth, this is almost shocking. It is smooth, cool, faintly oiled. The squares have been worn pale and glossy by other fingers that have traveled exactly this route, square by square, a great many times. There are no dice as you would know them. To move, you cast a handful of throwing sticks flat on one side, rounded on the other, or a few knuckle bones, the small ankle bones of sheep and goats. You toss them down. You count which faces have fallen up, marked, unmarked, up, down. You will notice that this is the very same question being asked at that distant Ice Age fire. The same binary heart, marked or not, yes or no. We have simply dressed it in ivory now, and given it a room of its own. History does love a fresh coat of paint on an old idea. You move a piece. It slides along the row with a small, satisfying talk times into its new square. And here is where the game becomes strange and lovely, and exactly suited to the edge of sleep, because by this time, in Egypt, Senet has quietly stopped being only a pastime. It has become a map of the journey through death. The squares are no longer only squares. They have become stages of a passage through hazards, past dangers, towards something on the far side. To win the game is, in a manner of speaking, to make the crossing safely. Some of those little marked squares are good, some are very much not. And a poor throw can send a piece tumbling backward down the board, the way fortune in any age tends to arrive precisely when you had begun to relax. It is a humbling thought that the ancient Egyptians imagined the route to everlasting peace as a board game one could lose on a bad roll. One rather hopes the gods graded gently. In the tomb of Queen Nefertari, she is shown seated, playing, not fighting a monster, not pleading with a god, playing, moving her pieces through the squares, calmly, as the painted way to show her soul making its crossing. And the young king Tutankhamun was buried with several game boxes of his own, laid in among the gold, ready, one supposes, for the long game ahead. So picture the wealthy player, in their cool stone room, the lamp guttering, the river going about its slow business outside, the fine inlaid box, the ivory pieces, warm from the hand, the hush. And then picture, because the evidence allows it, the poorer player, somewhere else in the same town, kneeling on a beaten floor in the last of the light, and simply scratching the 30 squares into the dirt. No ivory, no box, no lid, just lines in the ground, a few pebbles, a couple of sticks to throw. Same game, same journey, same crossing. There is something in that which ought to settle you completely, that the rich man's eternity and the poor man's eternity ran along the very same 30 squares, that the route to forever could be carved into a king's treasure, or scraped into the dirt by a tired person who simply wanted, before sleep, to play. The lamp leans, the board waits. A piece sits, mid-journey, on its little square, somewhere between this world and the next. You move it one square on, and you let it rest there. When we go on from here, we will follow the objects themselves the way a marked stone becomes an inlaid board, and a board becomes a room, and a room becomes a city. We will leave the river and the warm stone and travel east to where people first wrote things down, including, of all things, the rules. You open your eyes in a low room of mud brick between two great rivers more than 4,500 years ago. The walls are close and warm and smell of grain and clay and lamp oil, and underneath it all the faintly sour, faintly bready smell of beer, which here is not a vice, but very nearly a wage. The city beyond the wall is going to sleep in stages, the way cities do. A voice, a cart, a dog, deciding something, then quiet. On the floor in front of you sits a board, and it is frankly a show-off. 20 squares, inlaid with shell, and redstone, and lapis lazuli that deep, impossible blue laid out in a shape rather like a narrow figure of 8. This is the royal game of Ur. One such board, dug from the royal cemetery at Ur by Sir Leonard Woolley, dates to somewhere around 2,500 years before the Common Era. It is beautiful in the deliberate way that says, the person who owned me was not short of a meal. Reach out and touch the blue. It is cool and glassy among the warmer shell. After Ice Age bone and Egyptian ivory, you have arrived somewhere that has begun, unmistakably, to show off its wealth on the surface of its toys. You take up the dice. Not cubes, little four-sided pyramids, 2 of their points tipped with white. You roll them in your palm. They are light, and they click. You cast. You count the white points that have landed face up. Marked, unmarked. Yes, there it is again. The same question, the very same one that the cold hand asked the dark 12,000 years ago. Only now it wears shell and lapis and lives in a city. But Mesopotamia gives this old game something genuinely new, something it has never had before in all our story. Instructions. In the British Museum, there is a clay tablet that records the rules of this very game written down by a Babylonian astronomer named Itty-Marduk-Balatu. In the year 177 before the Common Era, the oldest known rules for any board game on Earth. Someone, more than 2,000 years ago, sat down with a stylus and thought, this ought to be written down, so that we stop arguing about it. Which means the very first rulebook in history exists for precisely the reason every rulebook since has existed, because two people could not agree on what was allowed, and somebody finally got tired of it. Some comforts, you see, are eternal. Now let the city press a little closer, because the same people who played this game also kept lists. Endless lists. Mesopotamia ran on clay. Among the tablets that survive are humble accounts of rations handed out, beer and bread and oil and onions, the everyday fuel of everyday, tired human beings. And that, somehow, is the most comforting detail of all. That the same hands which rolled these lovely blue and shell dice had, earlier that day, queued for their bread and their onions. That a person could be an accountant by daylight and a gambler by lamplight. That after the work, and the lists, and the beer that was practically money, someone still cleared a space on the floor, and set down the board, and reached for the small clicking dice. Picture the room, the lamp low, the beer jar working quietly in the corner, the murmur of the dying city outside, the reed mat under you, marking your knees, the faint, ever-present smell of grain, and the board between you and another player, that ridiculous, gorgeous board, with its road of shell and lapis, waiting for fortune to be asked. Once more the oldest question. You roll the dice in your hand. They are warm now from your skin. You do not cast them yet. You simply hold them. Feel the little points. Feel the warmth. Feel how close the walls are, and how much closer sleep is getting. In a while, we will leave the rivers and the lists behind. We will follow this game one more step out of the snug brick room, into the open air, into a loud, gossiping, sunlit town that thought it would last forever, and was, for once, almost right. You open your eyes into noise. After the hush of the river and the closed brick room, this is a shock, but a gentle one. The way a familiar crowd is a kind of comfort. You are standing in a Roman town in the warm part of the year, and the place is alive. People are everywhere. Voices overlap. Somewhere, someone is losing an argument loudly and enjoying it enormously. You are leaning on the counter of a thermopolium, a Roman bar, a hot food counter. There were at least 80 of them in Pompeii alone. They were ordinary, the way a coffee shop is ordinary now. Great clay jars sit sunk into the masonry counter, and from them comes warm food, and warm drink, and the faint hiss of the day's heat. The counter under your forearms is cool stone, worn smooth. The air smells of wine, and warm bread, and frying, and too many people, and the particular sun-baked dust of a southern town. After everything that has come before, you will notice you are no longer cold, no longer alone, no longer waiting out the weather. You are simply out, in company, at a bar, on an ordinary evening. And here at last, the game has become entirely, gloriously ordinary. No tomb, no ritual, no journey of the soul, just dice. The Romans adored them. They cast them with knuckle bones, two astragaloi, the little ankle bones of sheep and goats, among the most popular gambling tools in all antiquity. used like dice or like jacks, and sometimes tucked into graves, so the dead need not be bored. At the fort of Vindolanda, up on the cold edge of the empire, gaming gear turns up everywhere, 16 boards for one strategy game alone because soldiers, like everyone else, must do something with the long hours. Somebody casts. The dice skitter across the counter. A little cheer goes up. A little groan answers it. Money, very probably, changes hands, which it was not always supposed to do. But rules against gambling have never once, in the whole of human history, actually stopped anybody. Some things you will have noticed by now are simply eternal. The throw, the cheer, the groan, the quiet settling of a debt that officially does not exist. And the walls. Oh, the walls. The Romans wrote on everything. Election notices, insults, prices, boasts, love. Pompeii is covered in it. Even now, archaeologists keep finding more in 2026. A project in the theater corridor turned up dozens of fresh inscriptions never published before. Among them a fragment of a love declaration, scratched into the plaster by some entirely ordinary person who simply had to tell the wall how they felt. And that is the great, soft irony you can fall asleep on tonight. This town felt so busy, so worldly, so absolutely current to the people standing exactly where you are standing at the counter, dice in hand, gossip in the air, a love note drying on the wall. They were, every one of them, completely certain that tonight was the important thing, that the argument mattered, that the bet mattered, that the wall needed to know. And it all comes back to us now as a whisper, a scratched line, a worn counter, a pair of small bones in the dust. Which is not sad, not really. It is the kindest possible reminder that the loud, urgent, must be dealt with business of any single evening softens, in time, into something gentle and small and almost tender, including you may allow yourself to notice the loud, urgent business of your day, the one you have been carrying, the one that felt so important this morning. It too is already on its way to becoming a whisper. And now you come back, out of the noise and the dust and the warm stone counter, back through the snug brick room and the lamplit river and the cold bright fire on the plain. Back, gently, all that long way, into your own quiet room, your own bed, your own night. Feel the duvet again, the mattress that smells of nothing but clean and home, the walls that ask nothing of you, the dark kept politely outside. You needn't carry any of it, not the dates, not the names, not the careful perhaps in it seems and the evidence suggests. Let it all go soft. It was only ever a way of walking you slowly down into sleep past 12,000 years of tired people who played their small games and asked the dark their small questions, and then, at last, lay down, just as you are lying down now. They are all asleep, you know, every one of them. The hand by the Ice Age fire, the queen on her painted wall, the accountant with his beer and his lovely blue dice, the Roman at the counter with a love note drying behind him, the whole long line of them, who threw and paused and looked across and hoped and then eventually slept. And it was always all right. The game was set down, the fire burned low, sleep came and took the day and kept nothing it shouldn't. So you can stop. Now, there is nothing left tonight that needs you. No throw to wait for. No question to ask the dark. You may simply open the hand that has been holding the day. Let your breathing go long and slow. Let the room hold you the way the fire once held them. Let the last small thought, whatever it is, drift off its little square and rest there, mid-journey, perfectly safe, until morning. You don't have to finish anything. You don't have to win. You only have to close your eyes and let the oldest game of all play itself out without you. Good night.